Your history class mentioned Cleopatra in 2 paragraphs. Both got her wrong. The impossible part, the part most textbooks leave out entirely, is that nobody alive today actually knows where the last queen of Egypt was buried. 2,000 years of searching, the most documented woman in the ancient world, simply missing. The version you were taught, the asp, the Roman general waiting in the city, the elegant death in her palace, comes entirely from Roman sources written by people who needed her legacy controlled. But Egyptian sources, written by the priests and scribes who had actually served her, point somewhere different. A specific temple, 28 miles west of Alexandria, a 4,000-foot tunnel nobody knew existed until 2008, and a researcher named Kathleen Martinez, who has spent 23 seasons looking for what the Romans tried to erase. Tonight, I'd like to walk you through this coast. No hurry, there's a long night ahead, and a longer story. Most of what you were taught about Cleopatra is the ending, the asp or the pin, or maybe not either. Historians still argue about the method, the Roman general waiting in the city. The last queen of a dynasty that was technically Greek, yet somehow became more Egyptian than any of her ancestors managed in 300 years on the throne. The textbooks treat her death as the close of the story, but that's where things actually get strange. She died in August 30 BCE. Octavian, soon to be Augustus, soon to be Rome's first emperor, was waiting in Alexandria. Mark Antony was already dead. The dynasty was finished. Roman historians agree on this much. Cleopatra was buried with Antony in a tomb she had commissioned during her own reign. They do not agree on where. There's something in this gap that I think you'll recognize, even if the specific history is new to you. The feeling of a record that stops at exactly the moment you most need it to continue. Of searching backward through sources and finding not an answer but the outline of an erasure, the shape of where something was and is no longer. I found this story on a Tuesday night when I couldn't sleep. I was reading backward through sources on Alexandria, following one footnote at a time, and I nearly sat up in bed when I realized what I was looking at. The most famous woman of the ancient world, missing from her own burial record. It felt impossible the way the best historical puzzles feel impossible, not unsolvable. Just stubbornly, infuriatingly hidden. Plutarch, writing about 130 years after her death, says she was buried in a magnificent tomb and that Octavian permitted her dignity in death. Strabo, who actually walked the streets of Alexandria within a generation of her dying, recorded the city's monuments in careful detail. He never mentioned a tomb of Cleopatra at all. Either he didn't notice it, or by the time he arrived, it wasn't there to notice. Hold those two accounts next to each other. The gap between them widens the longer you look. Your history class probably framed this as a romantic mystery, but the mechanics are more interesting than the romance. A woman this thoroughly documented, this clearly political. She didn't vanish from the record by accident. Someone spent real effort making her vanish. And someone else on this coast may have spent equal effort making sure the vanishing didn't fully take. For most of the last 2,000 years, the assumption was straightforward. Her tomb sat in Alexandria's royal quarter, the Bruchion. Alongside the earlier Ptolemies and possibly Alexander the Great. It made sense. The royal cemetery was a known institution. Cleopatra had built her entire reign around Alexandria being the center of the world. Of course she'd lie in it. Except, the Bruchion is gone. The royal quarter now sits 20 feet below the modern Mediterranean. Earthquakes in the 4th and 8th centuries dropped entire sections of ancient shorelines straight into the sea. Underwater archaeology has pulled remarkable things from that zone. Columns, sphinxes, sections of paved floor, even a granite sphinx that may bear the face of Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. But no tomb, not for her, not for the dynasty. Here's what I keep coming back to, the standard account. Cleopatra somewhere under the drowned royal quarter, lost to earthquake and tide. Is true as far as it goes, it just doesn't go far enough. There was always a second tradition in the ancient sources. A scattered set of references suggesting she had asked to be buried somewhere else. somewhere connected to a god she had aligned herself with so completely that her own subjects sometimes called her by his consort's name. That god was Osiris. The consort was Isis. The place was a temple 28 miles west of Alexandria, on a limestone ridge above the sea. How does someone this documented, this publicly contested, this carefully erased, leave no clear record of where she was placed? The Romans. And then the geology. The Roman Empire had a system for making powerful people disappear from memory. When Octavian took Egypt, Cleopatra became a problem to be managed, not a person to be memorialized. Her name was scraped off inscriptions, statues were toppled, portraits of her son were destroyed. Earlier Egyptian dynasties had done the same to inconvenient predecessors. The Romans were using a blueprint that already existed. And then the geology finished what the politics started. The Mediterranean has been reclaiming this coastline for 2 millennia. The archives of Alexandria are not lost only because they burned. They're lost because the library district, the royal quarter, and the harbor infrastructure now sit under the sea. The tomb, wherever it is, may be underwater, under the desert. Under a city of 5 million people that has been continuously occupied since Alexander founded it in 331 BCE, we begin where she was last seen. The coast, the drowned royal cemetery, and 28 miles to the west, a temple the Romans went after with a specificity that still demands an explanation. Place names from the ancient world are a kind of map under the map. They tell you what the people who lived there thought the place was for. They survive empires. By the time anyone gets around to renaming a place, the original name has usually outlived several languages. Taposiris Magna is one of those names. Magna is Latin, the Great. The Romans added it after they took Egypt, the way they stamped their administrative mark on things they wanted to claim. But the older layer is what matters. Taposiris is Greek. Taposiris, the tomb of Osiris. If you're holding a map of the Egyptian coast and you see that name, a question probably surfaces on its own. Why would anyone build a great temple and name it after a tomb? The answer starts with Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who rebuilt the temple sometime between 280 and 270 BCE. Ptolemy II was a builder. He expanded the great library of Alexandria, commissioned the translation of the Hebrew scriptures into Greek, turned a modest harbor city into one of the intellectual centers of the ancient world. He had a taste for scale, and for this particular ridge, he had something more specific in mind. The site at Taposiris on the limestone ridge above Lake Mareotis. Mareout today had deep roots before the Ptolemies arrived. The coast there had been religiously significant under earlier Egyptian dynasties. What the Greeks renamed was a stretch of coast where rituals connected to the Osiris myth had been performed since before the Ptolemies were born. The temple itself, in its full Ptolemaic form, was not small. An enclosure wall of limestone blocks, still partially standing, surrounded the sacred precinct. Inside, the main temple building was oriented west, toward the sea, toward the setting sun, toward the direction Egyptian religious tradition associated with the realm of the dead. At the northeast corner of the enclosure, a lighthouse tower stood, a miniature version of the great Pharos of Alexandria, planted here at the edge of the world. That detail stops me every time I come back to it. Not a watchtower, not a signal fire. A lighthouse, the kind of structure you build when you want ships to find you. Whatever this temple was doing, it wanted to be visible from the sea. But here's the thing about edges. A place this far west from the capital, this close to the horizon where the sun goes down. This is a place the ancient mind associated with endings, with thresholds, with the narrow passage between what is alive and what is not. The Ptolemies understood this. Ptolemy II understood it when he chose to rebuild the Osiris temple here, on the ridge at the horizon, rather than somewhere closer to Alexandria. He wanted the temple at the edge, at the place where the road runs out and the sea begins. The priests at Taposiris tracked certain stars across the centuries of the Ptolemaic dynasty, including the star the Egyptians called Sa. the heavenly form of Osiris himself. In the Ptolemaic period, the setting point of this star on the horizon aligned closely with the axis of the temple. With the direction a long tunnel would later run, with the direction of the sea, whether that alignment was built deliberately into the temple's sacred geometry, one of the astronomical calculations the architects used, cannot be proved by physical evidence alone. What can be proved is the direction. The temple faces west. The god faces west. The tunnel runs west. And in the west, the sea is waiting. Why would a dynasty that built Alexandria choose to put their most sacred Osiris temple at the very edge of everything they had built? The answer begins with a myth about a body that has to be found. Of all the Egyptian gods the Greeks could have chosen to foreground, and they had hundreds, they chose the one whose central story is a body that has to be hidden, scattered, and reassembled. Osiris in the myth is murdered by his brother Set. His body is cut into 14 pieces and scattered across Egypt. His wife Isis finds the pieces, all but one, and through her own power stitches him back together long enough to conceive a son. The son, Horus, eventually defeats Set. But Osiris doesn't return to the world of the living. He becomes the god of the dead, the judge who weighs every Egyptian heart. The myth is, among other things, an instruction manual for finding a hidden king. In the temple at Taposiris, that instruction manual would have been the literal liturgy. The priests there were curators of the Osiris cult on this stretch of coast. They told the story constantly. The architecture, what we can still trace of it, was built around the idea, this is the place where Osiris is gathered, where the scattered pieces are returned, where the body is held safe. Now layer onto that the Cleopatra question. Cleopatra VII was a Ptolemy. Across nearly 300 years on the Egyptian throne, the Ptolemies had carefully aligned themselves with the Isis-Osiris cult. Greek queens were depicted as Isis. Greek kings were depicted as Osiris. The dynastic theology was a careful Greek-Egyptian fusion in which the queen was, ritually, the goddess who reassembled the dead king's body. Cleopatra took this further than any of her predecessors. She was the first Ptolemy to actually learn the Egyptian language. The previous 6 generations had ruled Egypt in Greek, never bothering. She reportedly spoke 9 languages by adulthood. She presented herself in Egyptian temple reliefs as Isis incarnate, Isis on earth, Isis as queen. Plutarch tells us that when she appeared in public, she often wore the robes of Isis. The people of Alexandria called her the new Isis. There's a relief at the temple of Hathor at Dendera in Upper Egypt that shows Cleopatra and her son Caesarion making offerings to the gods in full Egyptian regalia. The relief is enormous, carved into the back wall of the temple, the kind of monumental art every priest and pilgrim would have seen on entering. The son is shown as a child king, under his mother's protective gesture. The mother is shown in full Egyptian queen's dress, not as a Greek noblewoman. The message is unambiguous. This dynasty is Egyptian now. Cleopatra has chosen the older religion, and she's chosen it visibly, publicly, and at scale. I'll be honest, the first time I sat with that image, really sat with it, not just scrolled past it, something shifted. She wasn't just performing a political role. She had rebuilt herself around an identity that the myth itself required to have a very specific kind of death and burial. If you've ever found that your beliefs about death shaped what you'd want done with you, if there's a place or tradition that holds your sense of what matters, you already understand the logic pulling Cleopatra toward this coast. Where would a queen who had spent her life embodying Isis ask to be buried? The answer in the abstract is obvious. She would be buried in a place where Isis had work to do, a place where the scattered pieces of a dead king were gathered and held safe, a tomb of Osiris. The evidence at Taposiris comes in layers. Some interpretive, the theology, the positioning of the temple on the very coast where Cleopatra spent her last weeks. Some documentary. Scattered references in Greek and Roman sources to a temple west of Alexandria that received unusual royal attention in the late Ptolemaic era. And some of it physical, a foundation deposit with the cartouches of Cleopatra and Isis side by side, found in the third season of excavation, coins of Cleopatra recovered from the temple precinct. Smashed statuary consistent with deliberate post-conquest destruction, alabaster portrait heads. None of it is a body. None of it is a sealed chamber with an inscription that says, "Here lies Cleopatra." But the damage is what stays with you. The Romans broke things at many sites after the conquest. At Taposiris, they broke things with unusual thoroughness. Statues weren't just defaced. They were smashed and the pieces scattered into foundation rubble. The temple's working life was cut short. The site was effectively abandoned within a generation of the Roman annexation. The standard reading, they were breaking a Cleopatra-Isis cult center. Plausible. Romans broke cult centers, yet the attention at Taposiris is unusually focused, too focused for a generic suppression. And the focus is best explained if there was something specific at Taposiris they didn't want anyone to find. The temple's name, the evidence, the Roman response. They all point in the same direction the tunnel runs. In 2008, the team at Taposiris asked a geophysicist to bring ground-penetrating radar to the site. Ground-penetrating radar is not the dramatic instrument it sounds like. It's a device about the size of a lawnmower that you push slowly across the surface. It sends radio waves into the ground. Solid stone bounces them back one way. An empty space bounces them in a way that's unmistakable to a trained eye reading the scan. The first passes covered the temple platform. Normal results. Foundation stones, old excavation disturbance, plastered floors. Nothing unusual. Then the team took the equipment west, down the slope of the ridge toward the lake. That's where the void appeared. A long, thin, unmistakable hollow space, running west. What followed between 2008 and the early 2020s was the slow physical excavation of that void. A 4,000-foot ancient tunnel doesn't simply open. It opens in sections. Each section requires clearing the fill that's accumulated over 2,000 years. Sand and silt and collapsed roof debris, and in the lower portions, seawater that has pushed in through the porous limestone. Each section has to be shored up. Each section has to be documented before anything leaves the cut. The measurements settled on a tunnel approximately 4,200 feet long, about 14 city blocks laid end to end. The corridor varies from roughly 6 feet wide at its narrowest to about 8 feet at its widest. Ceiling height through most of the excavated sections, between 5 and 6 feet. You've probably never thought about what it takes to cut 4,000 feet of stone by lamplight. Neither had I, until I spent an afternoon with the excavation reports. The workers were in deep dark even near the entrance. Sunlight reached only a few feet inside. Past that, everything was done by oil lamp. The smoke would have been a serious problem. A tunnel collects smoke the way a chimney does. Workers hauling broken rock toward the entrance would have heard the cutting crew long before they saw them. The sound of chisels on limestone carries hundreds of feet in an enclosed space. If you've ever been inside a cave or a long underground passage, even a modern one, you know how completely the surface world disappears, sound changes, time blurs. The people who cut this tunnel lived in that darkness for the duration of their shifts, day after day, not knowing whether the crew working blind from the other end was on course. A 4,000-foot tunnel through solid stone is not a season's work, not a year's work. Tunnels of this scale in the ancient Mediterranean, and there are only a handful, typically took decades, sometimes generations. The kind of project one king commissions and a grandson finishes. The closest comparison worth knowing about, on the Greek island of Samos, in the 6th century BCE, an engineer named Eupalinos cut a tunnel through a mountain to bring fresh water into the city. His tunnel is about 3,400 feet long. 2 crews working from opposite sides of a mountain. meeting in the middle with an alignment error of less than 3 feet. It's been famous for 2.5 millennia as a feat of ancient engineering. You can still walk through it today. The Taposiris tunnel is more than 3 times that length. No laser surveys. No precision instruments, ropes, plumb bobs, and a system of geometry, largely inherited from Egyptian temple building practice. That allowed them to drive a level corridor through limestone for distances that shouldn't have been possible. The level part matters. The tunnel doesn't slope steeply down or up. It's very nearly flat, held at the depth of the temple's lowest foundation course all the way west. Drainage tunnels slope, aqueducts slope. A flat tunnel is something meant to be walked. A level, deliberate progression from the temple end toward whatever waits at the other. The western end hasn't been reached. The lower sections are submerged. Not from a roof leak, but because the Mediterranean has risen relative to the ancient coastline over 2,000 years. To explore the flooded sections, divers have to be brought in, water pumped out, and rock that has spent millennia underwater carefully shored. The work proceeds foot by foot. What would drive a civilization to carve 4,000 feet of stone by lamplight, for a purpose they apparently never wrote down? The answer is almost certainly religious. Ancient processional architecture isn't built for utility. It's built for movement of a particular kind. The movement of a god, or of the body of a king, or of the priests who enact those movements on behalf of a state. A level, hidden tunnel of this scale, oriented from a temple of Osiris toward the sea. That's the kind of structure a culture builds for one purpose: to move something important from a sacred space to a destination it does not want observed from above. The walls still hold the marks of the chisels that cut them. The tunnel is still being opened, slowly, foot by foot, running west toward the sea. And if you're wondering what it would feel like to be the first person to reach the end of it, you're asking the same question the team asks at the start of every new season. Most of what comes up from an archaeological site is small. The sealed sarcophagi, the gold masks, the intact royal tombs, those are the exceptions that make the news. The day-to-day work is coins, pottery, fragments of statuary, the accumulated debris of buildings that were lived in, then abandoned, then forgotten. The story of a dig is mostly the story of small finds, assembled into patterns that begin to mean something only once there are enough of them. The Taposiris dig, over more than 20 seasons, has produced a remarkable accumulation of small things. Coins first. Coins are the workhorses of archaeological dating. Stamped with a ruler's portrait, minted in known years, recoverable from specific layers of deposit. They're the closest thing to a timestamp the ancient world left behind. The Taposiris coins span the full late Ptolemaic period, with concentrations from the reign of Cleopatra VII herself. Some bear her profile, others bear images of Isis. Roughly 200 coins bearing Cleopatra's image, or associated royal symbols, have come up from Taposiris ground across the many seasons of excavation. 200 is not a background scatter. If you've ever sorted through a jar of old coins looking for a date, you know the difference between a coin that wound up somewhere by accident and one that was placed there deliberately. 200 means deliberate. 200 means this temple was paying sustained, organized attention to one specific queen. Foundation deposits, second. These are small caches of objects. Tablets, plaques, sometimes coins and figurines, laid into a temple's foundation during construction or rededication. The Taposiris deposits include a bilingual stone with the cartouches of Cleopatra and Isis side by side. In the language of temple administration, that stone is a sworn statement. This work was done in this queen's name, in honor of this goddess, in this year of her reign, no larger than a hand. It waited 2,000 years to be read. Then the statuary. This is where the Roman damage shows up most clearly. Almost none of the temple's original statuary is intact. The pieces that survive are fragments. Heads separated from bodies, torsos cracked apart, inscriptions chiseled off. The damage isn't the work of time. Time produces erosion, slow softening, surface wear. The damage at Taposiris is the damage of hammers and crowbars. Somebody came in with the intent to break, and they broke thoroughly. Among the fragments, several have been identified as portraits of Cleopatra, alabaster heads with the distinctive features: the strong nose, the small mouth, the diadem of a Hellenistic queen, that match her portraits on coins and in other surviving Ptolemaic art, damaged but identifiable. One of those alabaster heads is small enough to hold in two hands. Half the face is missing the right cheek, the right side of the diadem. The left side is intact. The eye is closed in the conventional Ptolemaic style, the lips slightly parted, the hairline rendered in fine alabaster braids. The first time I read the find report on this piece, I had to set it down for a while. Half a face packed into fill, not destroyed exactly, but not honored either. Whoever did it knew what they were holding. They stopped halfway. I keep returning to that pause, to the moment a hand made a decision, and then withdrew, leaving the rest of the queen recognizable to anyone patient enough to look from the left. What does it mean that someone stopped at all? The fourth category is harder to summarize because it's everything else. Mummy portraits, including a remarkable example of a young woman painted in the encaustic style typical of the Roman period. Her face is intact. Her eyes are dark and wide, her hair piled and pinned in the fashion of early Roman Alexandria, her gold earrings still gleaming in the wax that preserved her likeness. She wasn't Cleopatra. She was someone who had lived at Taposiris a generation or two after Cleopatra's death, wealthy enough to commission a serious portrait. Her presence places ordinary lives at this temple in the years immediately after the Roman conquest, doing what ordinary Egyptian lives did. Bronze figurines of Isis and Osiris and the child Horus. Pieces of an alabaster vessel used in royal anointing ceremonies, its interior still held traces of perfumed oil when the room was first opened. Strips of gold leaf, peeled from larger objects long since gone, the remains of incense burners, with carbon of burned resin still detectable on their inner surfaces. And then the negative spaces. Rooms that had been emptied in a hurry, floors swept, as if someone needed everything gone quickly. Passages deliberately backfilled. Not the slow, natural filling of abandoned space, but a purposeful sealing, using rubble and compacted earth. The mud held what was left. What was removed, it didn't hold. Each of these things individually wouldn't justify any large conclusion. Together, they describe a temple that was, in Cleopatra's lifetime, paying intense, organized, royally funded ritual attention to her and to the gods her dynasty had claimed as its own. And a temple the Romans then went after with unusual specificity. What would it mean if the Romans tried to erase Cleopatra and her own people hid her too well to be erased? That's the hypothesis the excavation has been working toward. The evidence doesn't prove it. The evidence is consistent with it. There's a difference between those two things. And the difference is most of what working archaeology actually involves. The mud held these things for 2,000 years. It's still holding the rest. If you find yourself wondering what's still down there, what the emptied rooms were emptied of, what the sealed passages were sealed around, you're asking exactly the right question. So is every researcher who has spent a season on this site. The Mediterranean doesn't give back the things it has taken, but it holds them. If you've ever watched a coastline change, a beach that was wider last year, a dock that sits lower than it used to, you've seen the same process the Egyptian coast has been running slowly for 2,000 years. Earthquakes, slow subsidence, sea level rise across 2,000 years. All of these have made the Egyptian coast a different place than it was in Cleopatra's time. Whole stretches of ancient shoreline now sit 20, 30, 40 feet underwater. Whole districts of ancient Alexandria are reachable today only by a diver with a flashlight and a careful sense of direction. The key geological event for this stretch of coast was a single day in the summer of 365 CE, a massive earthquake struck the island of Crete. The quake generated a tsunami that swept across the eastern Mediterranean. Along the Egyptian coast, sections of ancient shoreline that had been slowly settling for centuries simply dropped. The coast near Taposiris, like the harbor district of Alexandria itself, lost elevation rapidly. What had been a working harbor a few feet above sea level was suddenly below it. Further subsidence followed across the medieval period. By the time scholars started writing systematic histories of the Egyptian coast, the harbor at Taposiris was 20, then 30 feet underwater. The cut limestone blocks of the quay were still in place. The infrastructure was intact. It had simply been claimed, quietly, by the sea. In September 2025, a joint research mission announced what sonar surveys had located in the waters roughly 3/4 of a mile offshore from the Taposiris Ridge. Directly at the seaward end of the subterranean tunnel's projected line, a massive maritime complex. Port walls, stone columns, polished floors, mooring stones, metal anchors. At 40 feet of depth, in the offshore zone, the mission called Salam 5, a Ptolemaic harbor, had been mapped in detail for the first time. The oceanographer leading that mission was Robert Ballard, the researcher who found the wreck of the Titanic in the North Atlantic in 1985. His underwater drones had the range and precision to map the Salam 5 zone at a resolution no previous survey had managed. The finds weren't speculative. Divers recovered Ptolemaic-era storage vessels from the harbor floor, ceramic amphorae of the specific type manufactured during the reign of Cleopatra VII. Not an earlier dynasty, not a later one. Cleopatra's harbor, sitting on the seafloor where the earthquake and the centuries left it. Here's what the harbor's discovery changed. Consider the line. The temple sits on the ridge. The tunnel runs west from the temple, level, through the limestone for about 4,200 feet. At the projected end of the tunnel, 3/4 of a mile offshore, at 40 feet of depth, the harbor sits. Temple, tunnel, harbor, 3 points on a single westward axis at an azimuth of approximately 279.9 degrees. That's a line, a designed line. Its endpoint was recovered from the seafloor on sonar in September 2025. As of the mission report published in early 2026, researchers from Oxford and the Max Planck Institute were conducting DNA analysis on bone fragments recovered from flooded corridors within the temple complex. The analysis is investigating Ptolemaic genetic ancestry. No claim has been made. Results have not been published. The sea is still holding most of what it knows. The harbor, standing alone as a find, confirms at minimum that Taposiris was a serious maritime node in the Ptolemaic network. Not a fishing dock, a real harbor, sized to receive the kind of traffic a royal cult site would have needed. It was there in Cleopatra's lifetime. It received ships. It sat at the seaward end of the temple's main axis. The tunnel wasn't going nowhere. It was going somewhere specific. The somewhere is now on the map, 40 feet below the surface of the Mediterranean, 3/4 of a mile offshore from a temple of Osiris that still stands on its limestone ridge. What does it mean that the tunnel, the harbor, and the setting star of Osiris all share the same direction? All pointing west at the same angle from the same ridge? If you've ever lined up 3 points on a map and felt a pattern click into place, you know the specific weight of that kind of alignment. It's not proof, but it's not nothing. That alignment is still doing its work. The sea took the harbor. The sea has been holding it. And what the sea holds, it holds carefully without explanation, until someone patient enough arrives with sonar. Around 25 BCE, a Greek geographer named Strabo arrived in Alexandria. He traveled with the Roman prefect overseeing the newly annexed province, and he was the kind of observer who wrote everything down. He walked the streets, saw the harbors and the library district and the monuments, recorded the neighborhoods and notable buildings. He was methodical. What he saw, he kept. Strabo's Geography, Book 17, Section 8, carries one of the most precise descriptions of Alexandria's royal district that antiquity left us. He recorded what he called the Sema, the tomb monument, where Alexander the Great lay buried, placed in the heart of the Basileia, the royal quarter among the palaces and administrative buildings. He recorded the sarcophagus, then made of glass, the original golden one having been melted for currency by a later king. He described a city in which the royal dead were held at the center, visible, accessible. What Strabo didn't record, what his careful geography doesn't mention, is a tomb of Cleopatra. She had died fewer than 30 years before his arrival. The whole Mediterranean world had been writing about her, and Strabo, walking those streets, either didn't notice a tomb for her or saw a city in which her tomb was, already, not there. Other ancient sources place her tomb in the city. Suetonius records that Augustus visited Alexander's tomb in Alexandria. Cassius Dio confirms it. Both writers place the Soma of Alexander and the tombs of the Ptolemies in central Alexandria. Both confirm that Cleopatra and Antony were buried together in a mausoleum she had commissioned. A mausoleum distinct from the earlier royal Soma, built by Cleopatra herself, near the palace, the Lochias Promontory. The tongue of land where the Ptolemaic palaces stood, where the royal quarter met the sea, is today largely submerged in Alexandria's eastern harbor. The same processes that drowned the Taposiris harbor also drowned the Bruchion. Underwater surveys in the eastern harbor have recovered columns, sphinxes, sections of paved floor. The royal quarter is still there, under the water. If Cleopatra's mausoleum was in that district, it has been underwater for centuries. Remarkable things have been found. The mausoleum has not. Now hold both witnesses at once, because this is the place where the history keeps itself open. Strabo saw a city in which the royal dead were held at the center. He walked those streets within years of her death. He recorded what he saw. He kept it carefully. If you trust the ancient written record, you start with Strabo. And Strabo points to the city, to the royal quarter, to the place that's been underwater for centuries. The limestone ridge at Taposiris holds, in its turn, a body of physical evidence: coins, foundation deposits, smashed statuary, the tunnel, the harbor. These aren't interpretations. They're objects, and they point collectively at a temple that mattered to the last Ptolemaic queen in ways the other temple sites on this coast don't. The logistics objection that Strabo's account implies is worth naming plainly. Taposiris is 28 miles from Alexandria's royal quarter, several hours by fast coastal ship, longer by road. Plutarch places Cleopatra's final days in the city, in the mausoleum she had prepared near her palace. An ailing captive queen transported 28 miles along the coast road under Roman guard. This is not impossible. It's improbable in the way a great deal of ancient history is improbable, which is to say, it's the kind of thing that happened sometimes when people had reason to conceal where they were going, and knew the geography well enough to use it. What does it mean to have two honest witnesses pointing in different directions? One who walked the city, one who built the tunnel? Strabo saw one picture. The ridge at Taposiris holds another. Neither picture is complete. Neither witness saw the whole. Strabo didn't travel 28 miles west to Taposiris and write it up. The excavation has not yet opened the western end of the tunnel. Two partial records, honestly partial, each pointing from a different direction toward a question neither of them can answer alone. The historical record isn't failing here. This is the historical record. Ancient witnesses recorded what they actually saw, from where they were standing, at a specific moment in time. Strabo saw Alexandria from inside a city fresh in Roman hands, with the royal quarter still standing. The priests at Taposiris left their record not in words, but in stone and coin and the particular angle of a tunnel aimed at a star. Both records are honest. Both records are partial. The question they share is still open. If you find yourself wanting a cleaner answer, you're in good company. So does every historian who has read both accounts carefully and put them down still unresolved. A season at Taposiris is several months. It begins in autumn, after the worst heat has passed. It runs through the winter and into spring. The dig closes when the temperatures rise enough to make fieldwork difficult. The team disperses. The site rests. The fences stay up. Local guards make their rounds, and the wind moves through the enclosure, the way it has for 2,000 years. The Egyptian Dominican mission at Taposiris has followed this rhythm since 2002, more than 20 iterations of the same seasonal pattern. Each one begins with clearing fill from the previous season, re-establishing the survey grid, preparing the new excavation area. The middle weeks are the heart of the work. The slow removal of stone and silt, the documentation of finds, the small daily progressions. The late weeks are wrap-up. Securing open trenches, creating artifacts, filing the report that goes to the Egyptian Antiquities Authority and the dig's funders. The method is standard field archaeology. What makes Taposiris unusual is not the method, it's the duration, and what the duration has produced. Duration means something specific in archaeology. A single season at a site can tell you what is there. A decade can begin to tell you how it worked. 2 decades can begin to tell you what it meant. The accumulation of knowledge at Taposiris. Which layers belong to which period, which damage is Roman, and which is natural, which artifacts cluster where and what those clusters mean, has grown slowly. By being wrong about specific things and correcting the wrong. By having a hypothesis, testing it against what the ground produces, and revising. I have not done anything close to that. A few months reading reports, going through photographs, following the work of people who have been at this site since the first season. What I've come to understand is that 23 seasons is not a number, it's a discipline. The practice of returning to the same question, year after year, with the patience to let the site answer in its own time. That kind of patience is not native to me. I've been learning it slowly from the people who have given the better part of a working life to one ridge above the Mediterranean. The geophysical record is part of the method, a 2012 survey conducted by the Abbas team using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry. Instruments capable of detecting voids at depths of up to 100 feet in high-resistance limestone produced a map of what the ground contains beneath the temple floor. The survey detected a highly resistant zone at depths of roughly 80 to 150 feet beneath the main temple surface. It did not detect large royal tomb-scale architecture in the areas it covered. What it found was consistent with deep cavities. Natural or constructed, the survey couldn't determine. The recent seasons have been shaped by the tunnel and the harbor. The two structures that have moved the Taposiris argument from a temple and finds discussion into a landscape-scale question. The tunnel is no longer just a curiosity. The harbor is no longer lost. The axis connecting them is mapped. It's physical. It runs west at 279.9 degrees of azimuth from a temple of Osiris toward a harbor the sea has been keeping for 2,000 years. A season at Taposiris ends the way every season ends. The trenches are covered, the artifacts are crated, the reports are filed, the field team goes home. The core staff sits in the same room they've sat in for 23 seasons, looking over maps, marking the sections that will be opened next year, closing the books on the season just completed. Already thinking ahead. The sea has been receding and advancing along this coast for as long as there's been a coast. The harbor is still 40 feet down. The tunnel runs west, toward the sea, level patient. The line on the map has not moved. The temple holds its silence. The wind comes off the water at the same hour it has always come off the water. The work goes on, slowly. There is a difference between what the stones can prove and what they can suggest. Archaeology lives in that difference. It is a discipline built on the practice of staying inside it. Here is what the stones at Taposiris can prove. The temple was founded in its Ptolemaic form approximately 280 to 270 BCE. active continuously through the late Ptolemaic period, including Cleopatra's reign, which ended in 30 BCE. The evidence is in the stratigraphy. The layered deposits of coins, pottery, and building debris that tell the story of a site in continuous use across 3 centuries. The temple received royal patronage during her reign, proved by the foundation deposit bearing her cartouches alongside the cartouche of Isis. A small bilingual stone laid into the foundation during her lifetime, naming her as patron of the construction it accompanied. The stone is real. The cartouches are confirmed. Roughly 200 coins bearing Cleopatra's image confirm economic activity at the temple during her reign at a level consistent with royal support. The statuary damage is real. The pattern of smashing, deliberate, thorough pieces buried in foundation rubble, is consistent with the Roman post-conquest program of image suppression documented at other Egyptian sites. The tunnel exists, approximately 4,200 feet long, running westward at an azimuth of approximately 279.9 degrees. Cut through solid limestone very nearly level at a depth of roughly 40 feet below the surface. Portions are submerged. The 2012 geophysical survey detected a highly resistant zone at roughly 80 to 150 feet depth beneath the temple floor. The survey found no large royal tomb-scale architecture in the areas it covered. Deep cavities, possibly natural, possibly constructed. It couldn't determine which. The harbor exists. 3/4 of a mile offshore at 40 feet of depth. Structural remains consistent with a Ptolemaic maritime complex. Port walls, columns, polished floors, mooring infrastructure. Ptolemaic-era amphorae dated specifically to Cleopatra's reign were recovered from its floor in the 2025 surveys. The geometric alignment of temple, tunnel, and harbor on a single westward axis is a physical fact. The azimuth of that axis corresponds to the setting point of the star, the Egyptians called Sa, the stellar body of Osiris, during the Ptolemaic period. Whether the alignment was deliberate, whether it was one of the inputs the temple architects used, cannot be proved by physical evidence alone. Here is what the stones cannot prove. The stones cannot prove that Cleopatra VII was buried at Taposiris Magna. The evidence is consistent with a royal burial. The evidence supports the hypothesis. The evidence does not confirm it. The tunnel's western terminus has not been reached. What is at the western end is unknown. A sealed chamber, an open passage connecting to the harbor, a collapsed section requiring years to safely open. Nothing architecturally significant at all. The stones don't say. The resistive zone at 80 to 150 feet depth has not been drilled. The deep cavities are there. Whether they're natural or constructed, whether anything lies in them, the ground is still holding that answer. Other Egyptologists have raised a counter worth holding clearly. Egyptians did not traditionally bury inside temples. Temples were spaces for the living to worship, not for the dead to rest. The Ptolemaic practice of combining burial and sacred space in the same complex was a distinctly Greek development. And whether it extended to a royal burial under the Taposiris temple precinct is something the evidence cannot currently settle. The strongest argument at Taposiris is the alignment itself. Temple, tunnel, harbor on one axis, oriented toward the setting Osiris star, at a temple named the Great Tomb of Osiris, which received intense Cleopatra-era patronage, which the Romans suppressed with unusual thoroughness. The alignment is not proof. The alignment is the kind of accumulating circumstance that responsible scholarship keeps noting without closing. The bones in the Oxford and Max Planck labs may change the picture. The western terminus of the tunnel may change the picture. The deep resistive zone, if drilled, may change the picture. The question is not closed. The question is alive. But in the current state of the evidence, the honest answer is, we do not know. We have strong reasons to keep looking. We have found nothing yet that ends the looking. It is late. The dig has closed for the night. The road from Alexandria is empty. The lamps in the small office have been turned down. The wind from the sea has settled. The lake is calm. The ridge holds its long warmth from the day. The temple is dark. It has been dark on nights like this for 2,000 years. The stones don't need anything. The stones are patient. A few yards off the temple platform, the entrance to the tunnel sits covered, a practical wooden frame the team uses to keep curious feet out and the inside dry through the off-season. Under the cover, the tunnel runs west, level, quiet. The walls hold their old chisel marks, as they have since the first Ptolemies started the cut. The tunnel has been waiting for the work to come back. It's in no hurry. Far out to sea, 40 feet down, the harbor sleeps the way it has slept since the earthquake of 365 dropped the coast. The cut limestone blocks have softened with 2,000 years of silt. The columns lie where they fell. The mooring stones sit where the last ships left them. The Ptolemaic amphorae that held grain and wine and oil for a working harbor are still there, on the seafloor in the zone, the mission called Salam 5. The water above them is calm tonight. The harbor doesn't know it has been mapped. The harbor is where it has always been. Above all of this, the sky is the sky over the Mediterranean. The same handful of constellations the Ptolemies named, that the Romans renamed, that the modern astronomers catalogued, the names change, the stars don't. Rigel is setting on the western horizon. Following the same arc it followed in the last Ptolemaic century, when a queen who called herself the new Isis looked at this coast and made whatever arrangement she made with the world that was about to lose her. The star descends toward the water. It disappears, the way stars do, into the haze at the edge of the sea. Strabo, walking Alexandria around 25 BCE, kept the royal soma at the center of a city he saw with his own eyes. He walked streets where the marble still held the names of the Ptolemaic dead. He looked at the sema, the great enclosure. He wrote it down. The limestone ridge at Taposiris kept, across 2,000 years, a different body of evidence. Foundation deposits and smashed statues and coins and a tunnel and a harbor. It kept them the way stone keeps things, without explanation, without announcement, simply by being there, holding its old weight against the slow erosion of centuries. Neither witness has released the other. The line on the map is patient. The harbor is patient. The stones are patient. The Mediterranean has no tide to speak of. The sea here doesn't surge and withdraw the way it does on Atlantic coasts. It breathes almost. The water lifts slightly, then settles. The limestone at the waterline absorbs the sound of it. The sound is not dramatic. It is the sound of something very old and very patient, doing what it has always done. The temple has been hearing that sound for 2,000 years. When the cult was active, when the priesthood gathered at dawn and at evening to perform the liturgy of Osiris, the gathering of the scattered pieces, the reassembly of the dead king's body. The sound of the sea was part of the ritual landscape. The god in the myth was scattered across Egypt. The god in the liturgy at Taposiris was gathered at the western edge, at the place where the road ended and the sea began. The sound of the water against the limestone was the sound of the boundary between the living and the dead. The queen who called herself Isis lived with that myth, built temples to it, dressed in its robes, performed its rituals in public, in front of her people, for 39 years of a reign that ended on an August day in 30 BCE, in a mausoleum whose location no one has yet confirmed. The wind moves through the temple's broken walls the way it always has, through the colonnades, across the platform, down the slope toward the sea. The wind doesn't need anything. The wind is doing what it has always done. I'll break frame for a moment if you'll allow it. I started reading about Taposiris last winter on a night I couldn't sleep. The same way I've started reading about most of the things this channel has covered. I wanted to be somewhere else in my head for a while, and the coast where Cleopatra may or may not lie is somewhere most people aren't, at 3 in the morning. What I found surprised me. I expected a mystery. I got a discipline. 100 Egyptian and Dominican students and oceanographers and engineers who have spent their working lives returning to one ridge and asking the same question with more instruments each year. None of them have answered it. None of them have given up. I think about that often, on the nights I can't sleep. The unfinished work, the question kept open without surrender. There's something steady in it, a permission to not know that the rest of the day rarely grants. The harbor is 40 feet down. The tunnel is still walking west. The queen, if she is here in the way. The sea keeps things, without explanation, without announcement. I am not telling you tonight where Cleopatra was buried. I'm telling you that the people on this coast have been asking the question patiently for 23 years, and the patience itself is a thing worth keeping you company for a while. In the morning, the work will continue. The flooded sections of the tunnel will be pumped again. The sonar data from Salam 5 will be processed again. The bone fragments in the labs will be sequenced again. The season report will be filed, the permit renewed, the grid reestablished. The slow daily resumption of a question the ground has held for 2,000 years. But for now, the coast. The water moving against the limestone, the same water the queen would have known. The sea doesn't explain itself. It takes what it takes. It keeps what it keeps. And on quiet nights like this, in the dark 40 feet down where the harbor floor holds its amphorae and its mooring stones and its polished quay, the sea is simply keeping things the way it has always kept things, completely, quietly, without giving them back.